Right. I don't know whether anyone's introduced me. I'm Geoff Ingham. I'm at Cambridge University in England, and I met Randy probably nearly 20 years ago when, as a sociologist and not an economist, I'd been writing some things on money, and he invited me to a conference and to give some lectures in Kansas City, and that's how the association started. I'm not an economist. I worked with economists, and that, well, irritated me somewhat. And I started writing about money because I didn't think they really understood what it was about. So what I'm going to do now is, in a sense, summarize what I've been doing over the last 25 years, I suppose. It's going to be difficult in half an hour or so, but I'll go ahead. And it's a bit of background to modern money theory. Because part of the things I heard the last part of Randy's talk, where he was referring to the fact that economists didn't, or many or mostly mainstream economists didn't understand money. And one of the reasons they don't is the way in which their perception of the world has developed over the last century. So that's how we can start. Now, clearly we know that money is important. It's not just a matter of exchanges and payments and so on, but modern society is unimaginable without money. Felix Marting's written a good book on money, and he says, I think quite aptly, that money is the modern world's operating system. And that's why we get so nervous when we think it might break down or that its so-called value might fluctuate. Now, despite its importance, crucial, critical, fundamental importance, historically, and again, I think Randy was referring to this, money has been notoriously puzzling. And it's been the centre of unresolved and often rancorous disputes, both in economics and in politics. And Keynes, who we've mentioned quite a few times, although I'm a sociologist, I'm very fond of Keynes and reading Keynes, once said with his characteristic whimsy that he knew three people who understood money: a foreign professor, a junior clerk at the Bank of England, and one of his students. And then he's supposed to have added that they all disagreed. Now, the reasons for the disagreements are really quite simple. It all hinges on one pivotal difference in opposed theories of money and relatedly, theories of society, not just the economy, but how society is held together, how it works. I'll just mention them briefly now, and then I'll say more about this. The first is the idea that money has its origins in barter as the most tradable commodity. The values reside in the commodities and the functions they perform. Money is a thing, a tradable commodity. I'll say more about this in a few minutes. The second theory is that money is a token credit. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as there's a debt there that it can pay, that it can settle. Keynes again said, the Indian rupee, the coin, the silver coin, he said, the Indian rupee is really a bill or a credit printed on silver. That gives you the idea. Now, this first view is the one that's prevailed, and it's had sort of insidious effects on how economics has developed as a subject. It's a bit arrogant of me as a sociologist to say so, but I think it's true. And it's paradoxically at the standpoint of a lot of mainstream economic theory, which argues that money is no more than a neutral medium of exchange, or it should be. And there are quite a few economic texts, especially in the middle of the 20th century, said, oh, well, money's not a problem unless it goes wrong. But of course, it's always going, quotes, wrong. There's no real understanding of why it's going wrong. I'll just give you three quotes that span well over a century. John Stuart Mill in the late 19th century says, money does not interfere with the operation of any laws of value. It enables us to do more efficiently what can be done without it. Then Samuelson, the Nobel laureate in economics, I think Randy mentioned Samuelson, said, if we peel off the obscuring layer of money, we find that trade between individuals largely boils down to barter. And then in the 20th century, Marquis' best-selling textbook quotes, for many purposes, monetary neutrality is approximately correct. Now, there's a little side here. I don't waste too much time. I was checking this out, and I looked at the latest editions of his text. And the parable of the cigarettes as money in the prison camp has been dropped. And the emphasis on the barter origins really takes a back seat. So I just wonder whether alternative views are really getting ahead now. One of the consequences of this view of money and how the economy works, many people pointed out with great surprise, those who didn't know much about how economists went about their work, is that in the models, the formal models, based upon the underlying theoretical assumptions of economics, money and finance and banking were not modeled in at least the British central banks, the Bank of England's models of the economy at the time of the great financial crisis. I was, until my retirement a long time ago, in the economics faculty in Cambridge, although I was kind of a subordinate worker in sociology. And I can tell you now that no course at that time in the third final year of undergraduate teaching in the University of Cambridge had anything on the financial crisis or a financial crisis in general. I think things have changed a little, but that's okay. Now, this dispute between the two theories is linked to a wider dispute about the nature of the economy. One is the idea of the economy contains real values, money is neutral, and the commodity theory of money, in which money appears as the most tradable commodity. Now, during this wrangle in the late 19th century, an American economist, Francis Walker, famously said, "Oh, I'm fed up with it. I can't be dealing with these disputes. It's ridiculous. They're metaphysical. I'm going to put the metaphysics aside, the history, the whole lot. We're just going to say money is what money does. We can see it. We know what it's doing, and that's what it is." It's all kinds of circularity involved, but nonetheless, that's what he said. And it's the three functions, or sometimes four, that are found in all the textbooks, elementary textbooks. Money is a measure of account and a measure of value, the numerical measures of dollars and cents and so on for pricing of goods and debt contracts and so on. It's a medium of exchange and or payment, and we'll come to this in a moment, because these are used often, or most often, synonymously, interchangeably. And then money is a store of value. One writer is storing called frozen desire. We can postpone purchases. We can do something. It freezes value, or what we hope is value. Now, it's obvious that money does these things, but Walker's solution actually made things worse in a way. It masked and evaded the difficulties and confusions that he was trying to get over. Apart from not explaining how it does these things, the conflation of medium of exchange and means of payments being used interchangeably simply masked the problem. It covered over the two problems. They are not the same. Exchangeability and the means of settling debt are different. I'll say a little bit more about this now. Later in the 20th century, Joseph Schumpeter realized, and this is what I've been implying, is that the commodity theory of money, its origins, excuse me, and the claim or the credit theory, as a token that cancels the debt, were integral to two distinct economic theories. And this led to the difference between real analysis and monetary analysis. And he said they're incompatible. There is no way in which these can be integrated into a single theory. And of course, this is why these differences have continued for such a long time. The two inclusive theories of the nature of the economy, and I would add society, but we can't go into that now, is first the model of a stylized barter exchange economy in which rational maximizing agents, economic man, economic person, acts to maximize utilities. And the second one is that economies are historically developing socially constructed institutions involving law, convention, and a whole host of other things. I would say that, wouldn't I, because I'm a sociologist, but that's... And I'll read out Schumpeter's description of real analysis and monetary analysis because it's so good. I mean, this was 1930s and it's never been bettered. He says real analysis proceeds from the principle that all essential phenomena of economic life are capable of being described in terms of goods and services, of decisions about them, and relations between them. Money enters into the picture only in a modest role of a technical device in order to facilitate transactions. As long as it functions normally, again, it doesn't most of the time, it does not affect the economic process, which behaves in the same way as it would do in barter. This is essentially the concept of neutral money. Money is a veil or a garb over the things that really matter. Not only can it be discarded when we're analysing fundamental features of the economic process, but it must be discarded just as a veil must be drawn aside if we are to see the face behind it. Accordingly, money prices must give way to the ratios between commodities, the really important thing behind money prices. And this is also known as the classical dichotomy. Okay, this has lots and lots of consequences. Geoffrey Hodgson, renegade or heterodox economist stroke historian, written a book on capital, and he says, this kind of theorizing led to the bizarre situation that the economist's definition of capital was at odds with business usage. The economist's definition of capital was in terms of stocks of machinery, land, building, and the other physical assets, not money capital. But Hodgson says from Italy to the 13th century, in the 13th century to Britain in the 18th, the word capital referred only to money advanced by owners or shareholders to establish a business and to be used by their accountants, which has resonated with what I think Randy was saying about accountancy and the treasury and so on. Now, this theory has its origins in, well, not its origins, but it was crystallized by Adam Smith, who famously explains that the division of labor leads to an increase in production and efficiency, but this reduces or eliminates self-sufficiency. So therefore, producers can only satisfy their wants by exchanging their goods and services. They do this by holding on to tradable commodities, dried cod, nails, and so on. Eventually, because these are all rational economic agents, eventually certain commodities become money in the sense that they are the most tradable commodity. They can be exchanged. And as the Cambridge economist in the late 19th century said, money develops to avoid the inconvenience of the absence of a double coincidence of wants in barter. That is, if you want chickens and somebody's got ducks, you have to go around and find the guy who can satisfy your wants with his wants or her wants. Right? Now, coinage then was easily explained by saying, well, precious metals seem to have all sorts of functions, but they're also portable, divisible, durable. Yeah, they can be minted into things and stamped and so on, and we can have uniform pieces of equal weight and fineness, so you can move from a tradable commodity, from a piece of salt cod to gold, and you've got money. Okay, now, I can't deal with this in any detail here, but historically, unfortunately, most transactions through historical time have been conducted without precious metal coinage. The coinage has been base metal, paper currency, bills, all kinds of means of transferring the means of settlement. By the end of the 19th century, when in fact transactions with precious metal were tiny proportion of all transactions. By the end of the 19th century, these represented, or could be these tokens, base metal, currency, base metal, bills, and so on, during the gold standard, could be exchanged for gold as last resort. And this was good enough for everyone except the economists. People say, well, I don't really have to go and change my bill for gold. I know it's possible. We'll just get on with what we've been doing for centuries. Everyone seemed to accept this, except economists. They railed against it. There was a rancorous, terrible, the one that Walker tried to avoid by talking about the functions. And they railed against this alternative view of money as a token because it contradicted a fundamental tenet or axiom. That is the maximization of self-interest by these economic agents. In Smith's account and the other accounts, it was rational to hold nails or salted cod because it fulfilled two functions. Utility, it was useful, and as in consumption, and nails in production, and it also happened to be usable as a medium of exchange. So at the end of the 19th century, noting that cod, nails, and gold were not exchanging, an economist, Carl Menger, famously asked, why do people exchange worthless little discs of metal or paper symbols? Why do they do this? Well, of course, this question was entirely unnecessary, a self-inflicted consequence of the creation myth of money in barter. These bits of paper were intrinsically worthless. Why the hell did people? It's a circular argument. He said, oh, they do so because it's useful in exchange. But it's only useful exchange if everyone else is doing it. And you can't explain that because it's circular. But the two main problems with this myth, which has been fundamental or running through a lot of economic analysis to the present day, is first of all, there's no historical evidence that barter was the most prevalent form for the distribution of allocation of resources. First of all, there was norms of reciprocity. That is, you allocate goods according to age, sex, and status in a tribal or clan society, or by rationing. So the bureaucrats in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and elsewhere would ration. But the most important element in this, and this is crucial for the idea of money as a token and a credit, is that commodity exchange theory, based on barter, cannot satisfactorily explain money's function as a unit of account and a measure of value. It's implausible in barter with no other conditions fulfilled that bilateral exchange based upon traders' individual preferences could lead to the emergence of a universally accepted money of account. Barter commodities would have myriad different exchange ratios. 100 goods, for example, could yield 4,950 exchange ratios. Orthodoxy argued, oh yeah, well, constant higgling and haggling will lead to the creation of a market price for a particular commodity. It's implausible. The French economist André Orléans says, there are as many valuations as there are goods and circumstances of exchange, with no possibility of being able to deduce anything whatever from them. Okay, if it is as inadequate as I'm implying, and others have as well, why the hell has it endured? Why did Samuelson say that? Why did Manquis say that in 2008? And why do others still get taught this? I could give you an anecdote about listening to the end of a lecture given by my economics colleague. I was following with something else where he was making exactly the point about let's assume that money equals 1 and then we can do the equation. Right? It's still going on, at least in Cambridge University. So why? Well, first of all, simple question. First answer is this: it becomes embedded in normal science. It's what everybody believes. It's how people make their career. It's difficult to get ahead. If you're a renegade, you have to toe the line. Thomas Kuhn and normal science. Revolutions do occur, but the other main problem, I think, is that this and the money question is not an academic question. It's not simply, nothing is simply academic. Theories of money are ideological. Our understanding of money's nature, what it is and how it is produced, is directly involved in the conflict, which you're hearing about in this summer school, in the conflict about how much money should be produced, by whom, and how it is used. And think for a moment, central banks, the judiciary, along with the judiciary and the military, are all centers of unelected power in a democracy. All democracies, extreme examples, of course, of the independent European Central Bank, the ECB. It's not even, well, that's another story, and I can't digress because there's no time. Insisting that money is nothing more than a neutral element in the economy insinuates its removal from politics, can be put to one side. If money is neutral and merely there to measure pre-existing values and commodities and enable the exchange, then disputes over what it is and its use are misguided. All we need to do is ensure there's enough money to fulfill its functions, and then the smooth operation of the economy will follow. And the smooth operation of the economy is the one model by the dominant economic theories of the real economy. So again, it's self-fulfilling. The recently retired governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, wrote in his memoirs, in essence, the role of the central bank is extremely simple: to ensure that the right amount of money is created in both good and bad times. I mean, it's easier said than done. It boils down to the statement that we must be able to set the right amount of money. But the world's simply not as, or the world isn't as simple as such a statement makes out. The implied certainty is unwarranted. For example, and I think Randy mentioned this, the inflation, money supply, inflation causal link. This misses out what Randy was talking about on spending. It misses out the whole Keynesian and neo-Keynesian form of analysis. That's another question. There's no really time for that. No, I'd like to go on to that, but I can't. Okay. Now, the other theory, the one that obviously, if what I've said so far, the one that I would go along with, that is the theory of the nature of money, which is the title of the book that I wrote in 2004 and that came to Randy's notice. This is a theory about money. It's called, money as monetary nominalism, credit theory, and state theories. Here, money is an abstract notation of value, a unit of money of account. Grierson, another Cambridge numismatist, wrote, "Money lies behind coin." And it's the idea of money, the concept of money lies behind coin. Same as Keynes' idea that money was a bill printed on silver. The question arises, it's a category error, or so it's argued, to identify money with the means of its transmission. It lies behind the means of its transmission. What makes coins, notes, bills, plastic cards, digital impulses, and so on and so on? What makes them all money? And this leads to a further question of what is the duality of money, and it causes a lot of problems. How am I doing for time? Does anybody give me a signal here? No? Can anyone give me a signal about the time? Okay. Right. This leads to another problem, what I call the duality of money. Okay, thanks. 12 minutes. I better move on. An important, I'm going to have to summarize briefly. This is 25 years into 25 minutes, which is difficult. The question I'm pursuing here then is what is called the duality of money. Money is a nominal unit of account. And it's also actual purchasing power. A dollar always equals 100 cents. During the gold standard, a pound or a dollar will be equal to a weight of gold priced in the unit of account. But on the other hand, the actual purchasing power of that money will vary. So if you just bear with me, I'm going to move on now to this particular issue of, right. So the idea, as Keynes said, that the fundamental concept in the theory of money, he said, was money of account. And he said this is the following. Money of account, namely that in which debts and prices and general purchasing power are expressed, is the primary concept of theory of money. Money proper in the full sense can only exist in relation to a money of account. Money is that which answers the description of money, rather than its material or substantive nature, or in fact, as we'll see, its purchasing power. Searle, the philosopher, we have to assign money's functions socially. At the zenith of the gold standard, a figure highly regarded by modern money theory, Mitchell Innes, although he was writing in the United States, he was an Englishman. He said, at the height of the gold standard, the paper currency and the gold were both money, not because of their direct interrelationship, because of their common relationship to the dollar. It was the abstract concept of a dollar that made the bill and the gold both money and made them interchangeable. It was a triangular relationship. And he says famously, the eye has never seen nor the hand touched a dollar. All we see is a promise to pay a debt due for a dollar, which is intangible, immaterial, and abstract. Now, Keynes got this idea of the idea of the money of account from his studies of ancient Near East metrology, measurements, and currency, and also he was influenced in this by the state theory of money. And the state theory of money was developed in late 19th century Germany and was linked to the sociology and the history and the School of Historical Economics. Now, like this also state theory of money, which is the one you've heard about, the state designs, establishes the money of account, pays for goods and services in that which it has assigned as money, and then receives them back in taxes. And this is what Randy's been talking about. Here, the state is issuing credits with which taxes can be paid, and these credits are emitted by the state in payments for the goods and services. State spending and tax are in this circular relationship. And the main point is that the money of account, that which counts as money, that which makes all this possible, is established externally by an authority. It does not emerge from the market. It runs completely counter to the ideas of free market money and Hayek and so on and so forth. Now, the state theory of money also influenced by the greatest sociologist of all, Max Weber. And he made a really clear distinction between formal validity of money, that which the state declares as money, and its substantive validity, i.e. its purchasing power. These are two quite distinct things. Orthodox economists have argued and ridiculed the state theory of money and of the credit theory of money for saying, that they accuse the state theories of saying that the state can create value. What is happening here is there are two values. There's the nominal value, the money of account, and the substantive value. I have to move on here because I had a nice little anecdote, but I can't use that. Right. There's been a simple resolution, though, to this problem available since the late 19th century. Weber made a distinction between valuableness, i.e. that which the state or the authority declares as the valuable thing that will cancel a debt, and actual value. So a sociological conception of the market based upon, a social conception of money is related to a sociological conception of the market put forward by Max Weber. And he contrasted or had two elements of a duality of money. Its formal validity, its valuableness, that which we accepted, that this dollar is good for the settlement of all debts, and its actual value, its substantive value, substantive validity at any point in time. And at any fleeting moment in time, we as users assume that this is not so fleeting. And if this belief in the non-fleeting nature of money is eroded, then chaos ensues. At any fleeting moment in time, money is no more than a nominal prospective value. Purchasing power is always provisional, obviously. And its stability occurs in those passages of time when the flux in the struggle for the supply and demand for both money and goods is temporarily settled in a social equilibrium. It can be a consensus, or it can be imposed, it can be coercion. Prices and incomes policies in Britain in the 1960s, your fixing of wages, the fixing of prices. Or there can be an agreement or a balance of power. But when this balance of power is disturbed, this, of course, is one of the ways in which full employment can sometimes so-called disturb or perturb a balance of power, then you get fluctuations. This dual nature also of money was also in the great sociologist George Simmel. George Simmel said the similar kind of things about the social construction of money. Money in relation, the barter theory of money involves bilateral relations, exchange relations, as does most economic theory. But a sociological conception of money was trilateral relations between payers, payees, and between them and the issuer of money. The fundamental here is that the issuer of money implicitly promises to take back in payment of any debt owed that which it issues as money. It's this reciprocal relationship. So, in Simmel's view, the major problem, but the major role of monetary authorities is to create what he calls the stable pole. This is what the gold standard was doing. The dollar is always worth a specified quantity of gold, but it says nothing about the dollar's purchasing power. In the absence of a gold standard, the problem becomes very, very difficult. And various attempts are made to objectively quantify the value of money in terms of purchasing power, measured by price indices, rates of inflation, and so on. And these are notoriously difficult. And the search for a single definitive measure involves statistical difficulties well understood by statisticians, but not the public. All the surrogates for a metallic standard are constructs, a part of a social process in monetary systems to produce, and I use the quote from Mirovsky, the working fiction of an invariant standard. So the modern world is an attempt to create the credible working fiction of an invariant standard, and this is a social or political process. Now, you might say, with some justification, does all this matter? Well, it does, because it is linked, however indirectly, to modern monetary theory. Is if we can understand the social nature, social political nature of money, then we can see it as something not that doesn't inhere in a so-called natural state of affairs in an economy with a natural rate of interest and a natural rate of inflation and so on, but as something that is open to us to use in a way which we think will benefit the greatest number of individuals involved. That is, money is a social technology, like I think Randy mentioned, writing and literacy. But historically and politically, it's been detached somewhat from these and has been placed either in the natural world as gold or in a quasi-natural world of an economist model in which it's only a neutral element. it's removed in various ways. The efforts over the centuries has been to remove money from its, I hesitate to use the word, natural resting place in society and depoliticize it. I better stop there, so I think I've run out of time and you're all going for some coffee or lunch or something. I don't know. Okay. I can't hear you. There's something wrong here.
Should we let him hear, or should we have questions typed in chat?
No, we can hear you now.
You can hear?
Can you hear me? I can hear you now.
Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, I can now. I couldn't before.
Okay, we can take a few questions before lunch.
Good. You have
Yes.
your lunch. I'm going for a drink soon and some dinner. It's late. I'm joking. Any questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Can you hear?
Thanks so much for the talk. My question is about what you closed with, so the transformative power of seeing money as a social relation.
Yes.
So I've studied a little bit of Marxist economics, and there, I think sometimes the critique is sort of the inverse, saying that under the capitalist system, there is little state control over how real resources are allocated, and therefore you must see money in relation to commodities, because that is sort of like the reality of money in capitalism. And how far do you think that, you know, what you're saying, seeing money as a social relation, is a call for overcoming capitalist social relations to actually ensure social power over the allocation of resources?
Well, yeah, I wish I could answer your question. If you want to see my view, I haven't changed my view, unfortunately. I'd like to have changed my view. I haven't changed it for nearly 20 years. The final paragraph of my book, The Nature of Money, dodges the issue, and it's still dodged. I've been doing some work on the socialist economic calculation debate, and I've been looking at the sociologist Max Weber's view on the money in Mesopotamia and Babylon, in these ancient empires. And he argues, and I find it hard to believe, he argues that, in a sense, they didn't have money. They had an accounting device. What they didn't have is the second part of the duality. That is, they didn't have a substantive value that is established externally by others, and that has to be taken as a value in calculations. So I don't know whether that makes any sense. He's implying that unless there is a consensus in, say, a small-scale society, and you might be hearing some about this, about the money in colonial America. I think Farley Grubb's going to speak on it. I've just reviewed, I've reviewed a new book's coming out by a guy called Jacob Einig, which is precisely on this, what he calls the moral economy of the early colonial states, and how this. So in certain circumstances it's possible, but it's the old question: is socialism in any form possible in small-scale communities, or once they become larger and more bureaucratic, does it break down? This was Max Weber's view. He anticipated the bureaucratic nature of the Soviet Union before the revolution in Russia. And they also praised it enough to say that it will break down because it will be more authoritarian than a normal capitalist economy. So I've dodged your question. I just don't know. I wish I did, but I don't. Sorry.
I can see that there are some online hands. Are there more in the room? No.
Oh yeah, I've got an online something from Dirk.
Okay,
Dirk's,
yeah.
is
Go
Dirk
ahead and go ahead and choose some.
Okay, what is Dirk saying? Dirk says Zimmel got his monetary theory from George Friedrich Knapp in the 1990s. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, just commenting that Zimmel was took a long time to absorb the state theory of money, but it's not just the state theory of money. Yeah, that's the answer. I mean, any more? Any more before you go for your lunch? Yeah,
1 second.
Sherry, I've got some people coming up here. No. Have I gone again?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. So I was wondering, through your research, what you found looking into the future about like what we could do with exchange rates, considering your theory about the state of money and how we might build those relationships with this idea with, countries that may not have the state of exchange that we do with other countries that we share those relationships with.
Well, this is over half a century ago when I went first to teach as a university lecturer in Cambridge as a sociologist. I say I rubbed shoulders with economists, and I looked at their examination papers, their tests at the end of the third year, and there was one question there, and it's, could there be a world money without world government? And I guess that's the question. It's international monetary arrangements are essentially political. I don't know whether that's answer your question. That's where they're so difficult. Without us, de facto or legally, you can have a stable pole, as Zimmel would call it. It can be the dollar gold standard of Bretton Woods, or the regional gold standard, or monetary unions, or customs unions, and so on. But these are politically engineered and politically developed. When these break down, in fact, these exchange markets, they're not money markets. In fact, they are barter markets where currencies buy each other. Hence, the volatility and the confusion.
Okay, we have time one more turn around. Okay.
I was just interested in knowing what your view was on the state theory of money and Marx's labor value theory. Whether you thought it was consistent or inconsistent.
It's I think this is a long. I mean, look, Marx is consistent. I upset a lot of Marxists some time ago. I'm not, I don't part company with Marx at all. I mean, Max Weber, the great sociologist, he said he was a bourgeois Marxist, and I'd go along with that. So Marx was ambivalent. I think he was confused. On the one hand, he refers to it can be interpreted as having a credit and state theory of money, but on the other hand, he's got the labor theory of value. He's still locked in Ricardo's economics, and he doesn't escape. So I think there are, if you take one side, the labor theory of value, then it's going to be inconsistent with a social constructionist view of money as a provisional prospective value that then realizes its substantive value in the workings of society. So I think it's the search in Marx. There's an attempt to search to anchor value in some substance, which is not unlike economics, although they move from substance to people's preferences and so on and so forth. So Zimmel is the greatest on this, is the best. He talks about the chaos and fluctuations, the vacillations, the turmoil in the economy. And it's significant. He writes at the same time as Einstein's theory of relativity and so on, and the shift from this Newtonian view to a view of relativity. And there's great similarities between his idea of how do you create a stable pole. Is there an ideal money which can do this? He doesn't find an answer, but I think he more accurately depicts the nature of economies than those which search for some ultimate source of value, which is not in its nature social or political. Do you see what I'm saying? The attempt to remove create or find a notion of value which stands aside from what we're all doing in our chaotic lives and somehow bring stability. Well, that's not going to happen.
Thank you very, very much, Jeff. Thank you. It's a terrific talk.